Welcome back to Electricity with Mr. B. In this session we're going to learn a little bit about plugs and fuses. Plugs are what we use with AC electricity in order to connect whatever it is we want to use, so the load, to the electricity supply. So we plug them into the plug sockets in our houses. Now, very important before I go any further, everything that I show you is just to show you how the plug works. Please do not take apart any of the plugs in your house. Now, with that in mind, also be sure to check for creepy crawlies on your wires before you start work. Let's get this undone. So, most plugs will have a screw in the centre holding them together. Okay, we take that out and we open it up. Now, again, this plug is not connected to anything at all. There's just a wire at the end just to show you what I'm doing. But let's have a little look. We'll pull it off. And inside, you should be able to see 1, 2, 3 wires. Now that must seem a bit unusual because everything I've been doing, I've been working with 2 wires. That's because AC electricity works a little bit differently. I'll just take this out a moment. You can see that each of the wires connects to the pins of the plug. And it's this one that makes this a little bit different to DC electricity, direct current. AC, alternating current, in this country, in the UK, has an earth wire. The earth wire, sometimes known as a ground wire, is what we use to try and get rid of excess electricity. You might have had static shock if you ever rubbed against something metal, or maybe when you've gone to hold a trolley you get a little shock of it. It's similar to that. Electronic devices, they give off, or they can give off a slight shock, and so to avoid that happening, because we're dealing with very high voltages, all electronic devices should be earthed. So the idea is the excess electricity should travel down this wire and into the ground. That's why it's called earth, because it goes to earth. Right, the main ones we're interested in are the blue and the brown. Now the brown wire, this one here, if it was a DC circuit we'd call it the positive one, we call it the live wire. So if you ever see a brown wire with AC electricity, that's your live one, which makes the blue one the negative or neutral one. Yep. And so those two each connect to a different pin. Got one there, and actually if we look on the plug, should be able to see it says 250 volts. It's an old plug because it shouldn't be more than 240, but never mind. We've got L for live and N for negative or neutral. We've also got the E in the symbol for earth there. Now you might also notice 13A. You probably see this on lots and lots of plugs. That's all to do with this device here. 13A is 13 amps. Now, we talked about amps lots before. It's the sort of power of the circuit. Each plug will have one of these in. Just going to try and get that out without breaking it. There we go. That is a 13 amp fuse. Now a fuse is just a simple way of making sure that you don't get too many amps or too much power travelling through a circuit. All it is if, let's say, you sent 12 amps through the circuit, the electricity will travel through this no problem at all and go through it. But if you send any more than 13 amps, that will burn out and break. It won't catch fire, it will just break and the circuit won't work anymore. Now another type of fuse you might have seen is one of these. You see them in cars and simple electronics as well. Now this is a slightly better example because you can see what's going on inside it. The circuit connects up one side onto one metal prong and one to the other. It travels through the middle and we can just about see inside a thin bit of snaking metal. Now the idea of that is that's been specially tested so that anything up to the number of amps it will go through. Anything more than that it will get hot and will burn out. Won't cause a fire, it will just burn out really quick and then the circuit won't work anymore. And we can see on the top, or hopefully you can see if it focuses, there we are. This one's rated for 10 amps. Anything up to 10 amps it'll run quite happily. As soon as you get more than 10 amps it'll burn out. Now the reason we have fuses is because once in a while you do get a surge of electricity, or for whatever reason there's too much electricity going through the circuit. And so what the fuse does, it's a very cheap way of stopping things from breaking. Fuses you can replace really cheaply. Your highly expensive electronics, a bit more expensive, so you want to get rid of the fuse, not the electronics. We've got another example of one here. This is an old-fashioned kind of fuse. It's inside a little glass case, and you might be able to see there's a very, very thin wire inside. And again, you wire that up. If it gets too much electricity through it, just quickly fizz it out, and that stops the circuit. And that's easily replaced. What you can do as well is a variation on these. Instead of it burning out, you get slightly cleverer ones. This one rated for 25 amps, so again you hook it up to the circuit. If you get more than 25 amps, instead of burning out, it just breaks the circuit like a switch, and all you have to do is fix the problem and then press the little button and it will start working again. So it's a reusable fuse, so it shouldn't burn out, it'll just break. And that's similar to circuit breakers in your house. If ever there's a power surge, the circuit breaker will trip. That just means it flicks a switch, stops the electricity until you solve the problem and you turn it back on again. So back to the plug then. You can see I've taken the fuse out in order to show you the gap in the circuit. So we've got, lost my pin. We've got the pin of the plug, which slides in there, and without the fuse, which fits there, the circuit will not work because the electricity is meant to go from the pin into the brown wire, so you need a bridge between there. And this is where dodgy electricians come in and just put a piece of metal in there. Oh yeah, that'll work. Well, yes it will, but as soon as something goes wrong, all that electricity is going into your electronics, whatever it is, Hoover, kettle, and it will blow it up and start a fire, which is why this should be done safely. So we replace the fuse which had blown in there, and then that works perfectly. Well, almost perfectly. We need the plastic cover over the top. Plastic does not conduct electricity, which is why we still use plastic for plugs. We haven't found a better solution just yet. And that sits over the top. And we screw it back down. It's always really important with plugs as well to check that the wires are connected properly, because you don't want them getting loose or worse, touching one another, because then there'll be a very big bang and that will blow the circuit breakers in your house or worse. So a few little safety things with plugs. Number one, don't open up any plugs. An adult can do that, no problem at all. This is just to show you. Second thing, if ever you find wires sticking out of a plug, or what we call frayed wires, or a break in the circuit, don't touch them, leave it be, go and get someone. Don't even try to unplug it, just leave it alone. If there's ever any cracking in this plastic sleeving, best leave it alone. Or if you go to pull the plug out and it's a bit warm, if it's got hot, definitely go and tell someone. A common thing that goes wrong with plugs as well is when people replace the fuse, they don't put the right fuse back in. So like with this one, it says 10 amps. Now this plug was designed for something that ran off 10 amps, but what people sometimes do is they say, oh, that fuse will do, and they bung it into something that runs on 13 amps. You can see what will go wrong here. It will blow and you'll be back where you started. So it's very important when plugs are fitted, they have the correct amps. So I'm going to switch that out before I use it. Hopefully now you understand a little bit more about how plugs and fuses work, and I'll see you next time. Bye.